Hey guys, you've got through to MSI Overclock Academy and Team Great Britain, and what we're doing now is module number 3 out of 5, and this one is all about understanding liquid nitrogen. Now, why would we want to do that? Well, the most common cooling source for extreme overclockers is liquid nitrogen. Sure, there are others that are colder, if you want to call it that, like helium, but it's really expensive and it's not something we can do. I know a couple of guys have done it, but the cost of helium, or at least the cost of helium in the UK, is just absolutely ridiculous. So we use liquid nitrogen, Ln2, and it's got another benefit as well. First and foremost, it's safe. Yeah, as strange as that might sound, guys, Ln2 is comparatively a safe and benign substance. It's inert, so what that means is it doesn't explode, doesn't burst into flames, nor is it corrosive, and it is neither an acid nor an alkaline. Okay, so let's just move right along. Let's get into the physical and chemical properties of liquid nitrogen. Okay, the appearance that we get to see is as a liquefied gas. Okay, it literally looks like a liquid. I've got some over here. Let's have a look, see. I don't know if you can see inside. There, can you see? Yeah, I'm going to pour a little over here so you can see. Just pour it onto the desk. There we go. Can you see pouring out? There, like water. Okay. Basically, I'm freezing my desk at the moment, and that is what liquid nitrogen looks like. It's just a clear liquid, and as soon as it touches anything that's warmer than minus 196 degrees Celsius or minus 321 degrees Fahrenheit, it boils off. And it has no odor, it has no color, it has no flash point, so that means it doesn't burn. It's water soluble at 0.02 grams a liter, and it has a vapor density of 0.97. That's with air equaling 1. Okay, and it has a relative density to water of 0.8. Okay, right. The next thing we need to know about is its toxicological information. So what happens if contact comes into various bits of you? Okay, let's start with the eyes. The effects on the eyes. Well, contact with liquid can cause cold burns, frostbite. Okay, remember in module 1 we spoke about burns, and I said it's like similar to frostbite. Exactly. Next one that can happen is effects on the skin. So if you pour this onto your skin and it's there for some time, especially if you've got watches or rings or something on, it potentially can cause you some problems. So I tend to bench without any rings or watches or anything like that. It just makes me a lot happier knowing that I'm not going to have a problem. So can cause severe frostbite if you get cold, and as I told you, what you can do is warm it up. Right. Inhalation effects. Well, if you sit with your face over the flask, I suppose it can happen, but as we all are sensible and we bench in well ventilated areas, it's not going to be an issue. In high concentrations it can cause asphyxiation. Symptoms may include loss of mobility, consciousness, and like I said earlier as well in module 1, if it's happening to you, you might not be aware of it. Okay, so it's often a good idea to bench with a buddy if you're new at this, because if something happens, more than likely it'll happen to one first and then the other can do something about it. Now, you've got to understand that asphyxiation can come about really quickly, okay, and so rapidly that the person benching doesn't actually have time to do anything about this to protect themselves. So it's something to take quite seriously. So always bench with a window open, always bench with good ventilation. All right. Ingestion effects. Well, ingestion is not considered a potential route of exposure unless you are one of these folks that go to these posh restaurants and cocktail bars, and they make you a nice cocktail with liquid nitrogen, and you're an absolute idiot, and you drink the cocktail while the liquid nitrogen is still in there and you swallow it. Not a good idea. Okay. You know, if you're exposed to an environment with you've been using a lot of liquid nitrogen, these are the things to look out for to let you know that, okay, there's just a little too much nitrogen in the air, not enough airflow, not enough oxygen. Okay, so these are the kinds of things that you need to be aware of. Get dizziness, a lot of saliva, okay, feeling of nausea, vomiting. You start losing your ability to be mobile, and obviously consciousness. Okay. Now, what happens if what do you do if stuff happens? Okay, well, the general advice is, and it's common sense, guys, remove the person to an area where there is, you know, lots of fresh air. So you get them out of the nitrogen-rich environment if they passed out, and you obviously you only go into that room, into that venue, if you've opened the door, there's ventilation, or you're wearing a self-contained breathing apparatus. Okay, you keep the victim warm, you keep them rested, not hot, just warm. Call a doctor. If they're not breathing, you apply artificial respiration. Okay, if it got into the eyes, if liquid nitrogen got into the eyes, you rinse them immediately with plenty of water, not hot water, just normal water. Okay, and you seek medical advice, and keep the eyes wide open when rinsing. Okay, don't have high pressure stuff. Okay, we've spoken about this. It can cause damage. Okay, in the case of skin contact, it's going to cause frostbite, as I've said. You obtain medical treatment immediately as soon as practical. Place the area that got damaged into a warm bath, which is a temperature that shouldn't really be too hot. The most you can go is 40 degrees, but that's pretty extreme. Yeah. And definitely do not rub the frozen parts, okay, because this is just going to damage the tissue. And then you cover the wound with a sterile dressing, but this is obviously something that should be done by professionals in a medical environment, okay. As I've said before, the textbooks all say that ingestion, swallowing it, isn't something that's a potential route of exposure, but, you know, we know the numpties that are out there. They'll do it. Inhalation, just move to fresh air. If breathing is stopped or is laboured, give assisted respiration, nothing too hectic. Supplemental oxygen may be indicated. Okay, that's pretty extreme. That normally only really happens if the heart is stopped, for example, and trained personnel like medics or ambulance guys or doctors should actually do it. But what you can do, especially if you watch the TV ads, Vinnie Jones showed us how to do it. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation immediately, okay? In the case of shortness of breath, again, provide the person with oxygen or put them in and bring them into a space that has, you know, good ventilation. Okay. Now, what you have to understand is that accidentally we can do stuff. You know, accidents happen. We're people. We're not perfect. No one's perfect. So you've got to understand, if you knock over, okay, I'm going to try and show it here. I'm going to try and show just how much the stuff expands. I'm going to pour some of this down here, and just watch. Can you see? There's just a little drop, and it just flows across the desk. It really does expand, and there's a whole lot of it everywhere. I mean, I can feel it on my feet, I can feel it down my legs, everywhere at the moment. Okay, now the big thing with liquid nitrogen is the fact that the liquid to gas expansion ratio of nitrogen is 1 to 694. Okay, that's huge. One is to 694, which means that liquid nitrogen boils off. When it boils off, you had to tip an entire dewar, or a canister had to fail catastrophic. It'll fill a volume, a room, with nitrogen gas very quickly. And that's the reason, guys, you don't travel in a lift with a dewar. Okay, that's why you don't travel in a vehicle with a dewar unless you've got a window open, which is still not a good thing to do. It's recommended that you actually have your liquid nitrogen transported in a vehicle that has a separate, and separate is important. There's an important term here. It can't just have like a little panel in between. It's got to be a totally separate area. Okay, so if the liquid nitrogen canister happens to fail and vent completely, the driver won't be affected. Okay, so accidental release measures. Okay, as we know, it expands at 694 to what? That's huge. Get out. Get people out of the area as quickly as you can. Okay, safe areas are ventilated areas. Areas where there's a lot of air flowing through open windows. Outside's best. You then open the windows, you ventilate the area. Okay, you should have oxygen monitors if you're a commercial entity or something like that. I go to events, I tend to have one anyway, just in case. They can be expensive, but you can pick up a reasonably priced one. All right, and obviously if you are having to go into the area where a large amount of liquid nitrogen has suddenly and abruptly been released, you need to wear protective equipment. It's going to be really cold on the floor. There's going to be lots of frozen bits. You need self-contained breathing apparatus when entering the area, and you know, you need to test before you actually say that this area is safe. Okay, and that's where you need your oxygen level monitors. Okay, you basically also have to be fairly careful how you do stuff. If you drop or empty out a container after a meet and you've got a couple of 100 liters left over, what you mustn't do is just don't pour it down a drain, okay, or downstairs into a basement or work pits or any place, because what it'll do, it will accumulate. Okay, so you'll have like a dead area where there's no oxygen, and that's really bad, because obviously, let's say a pet or a person or a child or even an adult goes into that area, it really is potentially fatal. Okay, so what we do when we finish up, if we've used a lot, okay, obviously we ventilate the area. You'll hear this over and over again. If the stuff is leaking and pouring out, I'll switch it off or pick it up, but basically stop the flow. Okay, and if possible, increase the amount of oxygen into the area. Again, just ventilation. But like you might have seen in some of the photos, if you looked at the Team Great Britain's little visit to Hull platform, there's a huge vapor cloud, and this can obscure visibility, and that in itself can be dangerous. Whatever you do, don't spray water at the leak. Okay, please, it just don't. If the leak is from a container or a container valve, call the LN2 supplier, the emergency telephone number. They'll be able to tell you what to do, but don't do that. Okay, don't spray water. Okay, if the leak is in the system that you're using to fill your dewar or your flask, simply close the valve. Make sure you wear a glove, a suitable glove, or that you've got sufficient insulation. Don't try and touch a valve that's leaking with your bare hand. It's going to be seriously cold. Okay. Handling and storage, well, this is key for us. It's not just, you know, the big stuff that I'm talking about isn't going to really affect us unless you shipping it from one place to another, or you drive into town with a van and you pick up a couple of 100 liters and you drive home. That's when the other stuff was applicable. But this is the kind of things that every single one of us that use liquid nitrogen need to know about. Okay, handling and storage. You've got to know and understand the properties and hazards of the product before you use it. Now, we've spoken about this, so you should be up to speed about that. And again, stuff that I said before, only if you are experienced and properly instructed, you should handle these gases and cryogenic liquids. Okay, and for us who bench, properly instructed, you don't really need to have a certification course from BOC or from Cryoservices or any of those guys. You basically just need to have spent some time and learned the best practices. And the best practices, again, are common sense. You don't have LN2 flasks on the edge of a table where they can be knocked over where people are walking. Okay, you notice I have them quite central in the middle of the table over there. Let's just go to the camera so you can have a see what I mean. Okay, it's not on the edge. I don't move it to the edge because if it bumps against it could fall on me, and if it falls into my lap I'll have a very unhappy wife. It's in the center of the table where it's not likely to be knocked over, bumped. Okay, you also don't want to leave it unattended if there are kids or other people around. Okay, people, inquisitive people who don't know about it are going to pick up this flask. Someone might mistake it for cold water and drink it. Okay, it can happen. Okay, so it's just the best practices are common sense, and they often come from hanging around people that have used Allen 2 and attending these kinds of courses that we're doing now. Okay, you obviously need to know what it is you're using. Don't confuse liquid nitrogen with something else. Okay, you must close the valve when you're filling up your douar each time. Don't just leave it open and pull your flask away or your douar away. Actually close the valve first. Okay, as we said, a small quantity of liquid produces a large volume of vaporized gas at atmospheric pressures, so be careful where you vent, where you fill your device. Make sure it's well ventilated, make sure it's in the open, just like at Cambridge where we were. If you recall, the van was parked outside in the courtyard in the open. There was never a possibility that there would be any kind of build-up in places. It would never be a risk to people. Okay, if you're using a sealed container or a Ranger, those are the big tanks with the valves and the little nozzles. What's going to happen is, because it's under pressure, and pressure at a level equals heat, it is going to boil off, and there is a pressure relief valve that will actually open up and makes quite a noise. It can be quite a fright if you're not expecting it, but we tend not to use it. We use the normal low pressure device as a douar, and that's not really an issue at all. Okay, but if you are using one, if you're at a venue or an event that do have, just make sure that you've inquired that the pressure relief system is working correctly, and ask them to test it basically. Okay, so when doubt exists as to the correct handling of liquid nitrogen, okay, ask someone. Okay, if you're unsure, ask someone. They don't mind, just ask. Okay, it's really important that, you know, while this is an inert gas and it's not really particularly dangerous, it's the user that's dangerous. Okay, you know, a stick isn't particularly dangerous, but you put a stick in someone's hand and they lose it and they hit you over the head with it, all of a sudden it's become dangerous. Okay, as I've said, never ever store liquid nitrogen in a confined space. Okay, just store your container. If you're finished for the evening, you're finished for the session, store it in a place which is free from fire risk and away from sources of heat. Obviously, because, you know, liquid nitrogen boils at minus 196, so if you've got lots of heat there, it's going to basically just boil off, and you don't really want that. Okay, and all cryogenic containers are equipped with pressure relief devices. Okay, now let us very quickly look at our side of what we do. Make sure that your flask is a suitable device. Okay, it has to be a suitable flask. All right, now I use preference is a Thermos brand. It's a stainless steel, double stainless steel inside and out. Never use a glass flask inside, it's not good. Never use plastic, nothing like that, because if that shatters, you're going to have a whole lot of cold stuff on your hand. So use a stainless steel flask. Pay a little bit more. This is about 18, 19 pounds, up to 20, 30 pounds for 1.8 litre. I like a wide neck as well, makes pouring really easy. If you want to decant it into a smaller necked flask for precise pouring, that's good, but this is easier to pour into a pot, and with practice it's actually quite easy to get it into pretty much any container that you want, so it's not a big deal. Key is having your thermometers with you. You know, they're not going to be 100% accurate unless you have it calibrated or you've got very expensive cables, but you want it as close as can be, and I'm happy enough with the range that I've got at the moment. Okay, so my body temperature should be about 30 degrees, somewhere around there. If I hold it long enough, it'll get up to there. So okay, we're about 27, 28 at the moment. Okay, so let's just quickly pop this in. Yeah, it's almost okay. Let's pop it into the cold again, and watch what happens. Look how quickly it drops down. Bang. Okay, this one maxes out at 188. There you go, and that's how cold this is. All right. So just to recap, okay, it's a liquid. Okay, there you go. Can you see me pouring it? Okay. And it has huge amount of expansion when it is released into the air. You always bench in a ventilated area. Preferably you will bench with a friend. Okay, buddy benching, it's good fun, it's safer, and it prevents accidents. Okay, if you got any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and until module number 4, you take care, guys.